Consumers want to know the facts about the products they buy, but America's agricultural landscape is not easy to navigate. Between different companies, scientific advancement, government regulations, advertisement campaigns, and an unhealthy amount of myth and misconception, anyone would be hard-pressed to make sense of it. That's where Real Ag comes in. From the producers who make your food, to the store where you buy the final product, and everything in between. This is Real Ag. Now, here's your host, Kyle Bauer.
We're all familiar with the fragrance of lavender, but did you realize there are lavender farms right here in Kansas producing many handmade products? This amazing herb dates back in centuries in popularity. We'll visit a couple of these lavender operations on this episode of Real Ag.
Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.
What are the ultimate growing conditions for lavender?
Lavender needs full sun and good drainage, and as you can see, most of our fields here are on a southern exposure hill, and so we have great drainage. And what doesn't run off soaks in very fast because this whole hillside is sandstone. It does not need good soil. In fact, it doesn't really like it. It kind of likes crappy soil. And so apparently this had never been farmed. It had only been pasture, mainly because of all the rock that was here. But it really likes sandy soil, doesn't need nutrients. We do not use any chemicals, any fertilizers, nothing. And there's no natural pests or enemies. I have deer that come through the field every night. We've got rabbits that live out here. And they don't bother. It's too bitter for them to chew on. And the interesting side benefit of that is because of the lavender here, the deer and the rabbits may go through my wife's garden, but they don't bother anything there. She has had no damage in 16 years of having the lavender out here.
The biggest challenges we have probably is the cold winter, more than the hot summer. But you go up into Washington and Oregon, they don't have these extended heat spells like we have. So that's a challenge, especially when they're getting established. But the winters are the biggest thing, and the cold temperature isn't as much of an issue because everything we're growing is grown in Ontario. The difference is they get snow cover in the winter, and you know how much snow we had this last winter. We don't get enough coverage. So
snow makes a good blanket.
So when we get these sudden in the fall, these sudden cold snaps, that's what's a real killer to lavender or to other crops if they haven't gone dormant yet. Because lavender does not like too much water. It literally doesn't like too much water because that creates the conditions for stem and root rot. So they either put them in raised gardens or on hillsides so that the water, when we get these rains occasionally here in Kansas, that it doesn't set in water. So that's kind of a key thing in terms of propagation. But like up at Bennington, the soil is very rocky, and it's just perfect for lavender. It's absolutely perfect for lavender. And of course, our soil here is pretty sandy, being on the riverbed here at the Smoky Hill. Why, that's helpful because it drains quickly.
It's been really challenging the last 4 years. And so a lot of them have lost all their plants and had to start over. And Becky Ricard is down outside of Fort Scott. I don't know how many times she's replaced her plants because they just had so much rain. And lavender is a drought-tolerant plant. They like a drink, but then they need to dry out before they get any more moisture. Part of it is if the root system stays damp, it develops a fungus, and the fungus actually kills the plant. There's probably more lavender killed by overwatering than just totally ignoring it. Many people say, well, I can't keep lavender alive. And then when I start talking with them, I find out they're right in line with all the water-intensive plants they're watering every day. And I just tell them, stop when you get to the lavender, and you should be okay. They do need to be trimmed or cut back, but it's not a severe cutback, not anything like roses or anything like that. They are a long-living perennial. My oldest plants are going on 17 years old, and the bulk of the fields are probably between 12 and 14 years old right now. And we're putting in some replacement plants for those that were damaged from the winter kill this year. There's a disease called Phytophthora nicotiana, and Phytophthora in the state of Kansas is really, it's already prevalent in the soil, but it's this particular strain that seems to really be devastating to lavender. And we haven't had the issue here in Kansas, thank God. The Department of Ag really stepped in and helped us when we had some plants shipped in here that were infected. And nationwide, we're having everybody ship their plants to Clemson University in South Carolina to have them tested, just to make sure we've got identifying the same strain, because they're doing DNA sequencing. And that's through our United States Lavender Growers Association that we do that.
Does lavender seem to be a crop expanding throughout Kansas?
It is not real common in Kansas. In fact, we've established about 15 to 20 new small farms here in Kansas, from up in the northwest to around Kansas City area to a number of them down in the Wichita area. So, but the big farms are up at Bennington. There's a big one just south of Lawrence, south of Clinton Lake. That's the biggest one in the state. And then there's a number of them that are smaller, maybe 300-400 plants, just getting started. But we've got several people who are just really getting going, and so we work a lot with trying to help them understand what they need to do to amend the soil, what kind of conditions.
It is. When I started, I was the second lavender farm, Kansas Lavender Farm, which is just located west of Topeka, which is Jim and Mary Ingerson. They were the first. They started about 2 years before I did. And I started in 2002, and there are now, not counting Ingerson's farm, there's 9 new farms in the state of Kansas.
How is lavender propagated?
We propagate through taking cuttings. We do not use the seed for 2 reasons. First reason is we don't know what pollinated it, so we don't know what variety we would end up with. And the second reason is the propagation rate of seed is like 2%. So if I take a 72-cell tray and put a seed in each one of them, I might get 1 plant out of that. Whereas if I take a cutting, I've got about a 92% chance of success. So I know where I want to spend my time, and it's not with seeds. In fact, seeds the only thing we don't use from the plant. Well, and the roots, obviously, but yeah, that's the one thing that goes in the compost pile.
This house primarily propagates lavender, and we grow all of this from cuttings. So we do not do anything from seed. It's all from cuttings. And then we get these in this size of a pot here, so that now in the next couple of weeks we'll literally be sending out thousands of these. People come and pick them up, and then they'll plant them in their fields.
When should lavender be harvested?
Anywhere from middle of June. Yeah, right, hot part of the summer. Anywhere from the middle of June on until late fall, depending on what varieties you have and when they bloom.
Typically we would be right in the middle of harvest right now. It's much later this year because we had so much damage and the plants had to come out of that shock. Those that did, we lost a large percentage of our fields this year because of the winter kill damage. And people ask me, well, you know, I lost my plant, what happened? And I don't know if you recall, back in late January, early February, we had about 8 or 9 days where it was in the high 60s, low 70s, and the plants started coming out of dormancy, and then it was down to 0. And we had no snow cover because of the warm days to protect the plants, and so all the root systems were damaged. And some of them recovered, like the English varieties, most did not.
What is the best species of lavender to grow?
Buena Vista, that's this one back behind us here. That's my favorite. It's an English variety. It was developed by Dr. Roberts out in Oregon, and it's just, we use it for our culinary lavender. We use it for our wreath making, the fresh bundles, fresh and dried we sell. Typically is all the Buena Vista, mainly because I have the most of that of the English varieties. but we've also got Hidcote and Munstead. And you can see down here we got some white lavender, which is a variety called Nana. I've got 15 varieties and that have been suitable for our area. And there's between 450 and 500 varieties of lavender, but most of them we can't grow, like the French and the Spanish cultivars, because they just can't take the cold. So ours are all plants that are acclimated for our area.
So we have about 40 varieties here on the farm, and we continually try to expand the number of varieties to try to see what varieties will grow in the climate here in the Midwest, and both in our hot summers and our harsh winters.
Does it require special equipment to harvest?
Well, when we first started, I invited a local farmer. I said, tell me, how much did the last combine you bought cost? And he was, he must have been getting old, because he thought they only cost around $350,000, and we all know they cost a lot more than that now. So after he told us how much they cost, I pulled out this little sickle, and I said, how about $695? And literally, in this part of the country, everything is hand labor. So we do it by hand. We'll grab a bunch of the buds that are ready to bloom and just use the sickle and slice it, put a rubber band around it, then we hang it up to dry, unless we're selling it fresh. We hang it up to dry, and then once it's dried, we take the buds off, and then the buds are what are used either for culinary purposes or for the sachets or things like that. And then we don't, but some people then, if they have a big crop, will use that and distill it and make lavender oil and lavender hydrosol. We're not that big, yeah. It takes a lot to get much oil.
Yeah, it's called a Japanese harvest sickle. And it's a curved blade that's serrated about this long, like this, and it's all cut by hand. And like last year, I've got about 4,600 plants, or did have, and they averaged about 12 bundles per plant per year. So we were cutting over 50,000 bundles. Now, a fresh bundle, when it's cut, averages about 5 ounces in weight. And when it's dried, it's maybe 2.25 ounces. So most of that moisture we need is water, and it evaporates. However, the cut weight, we harvested about 7.5 tons by hand last year, off of less than 2 acres.
How is lavender dried?
We have a drying loft in our barn, and we hang it upside down so that the stems will dry straight. And we need to make sure that they're hung in such a way that they're not overlapping or touching each other. We don't want mildew to start to develop, because if it mildews, we need to throw it out.
Is there a special process for making lavender oil?
I don't produce that much, so I don't encourage the sale of essential oil, because it's worth more to me in order to make my product line. Because we make 86 products from our lavender, and it's all made here on the farm. We use steam distillation, and it's, yes, I could make alcohol, but I've got enough government agencies watching me without adding ATF to the list. But basically, my old still that I just sold, unfortunately, was an old copper still, and it has water in the bottom, and it's heated by propane, and the water boils, and it's actually the steam that pulls the oil out of the lavender buds, and then it goes into a condenser, which is filled with cold water. It converts it from steam back into a liquid, and we get 2 products out of it. We get the essential oil, and we get the distillate, which is what we call lavender hydrosol. And it's basically 99.9% pure distilled water. It's that 1/10 of 1% that has oil molecules suspended in it that we can't get out. But we use every bit we produce. We use hydrosol for cuts, burns, scrapes, insect bites, bee stings, poison ivy, and it's chigger repellent. And so, yeah, it's very important to have the hydrosol. And the essential oil is lighter, so it collects on the top. And so we separate the oil out there, and then I have to age the oil a minimum of 6 months. It's kind of like aging a wine. And because when it first comes out of the still, it is really strong smell, and it'll clear your sinuses in a heartbeat. But we need to let all those notes mellow out. And I do some blending between the different varieties to get the distinctive smell that's associated with our farm. And we have to wait a minimum of 6 months, preferably up to a year. And if I can, I will wait that long because it just brings out some sweeter notes. Now you can see on this plant, they're just starting to open up. And this is the stage that we would harvest it before they actually open up because the oil is contained in the bud. And if it flowers, the oil just dissipates away. It's really pretty, but it's worthless to me at that point because I need to get the oil. So that's what we're after. So the bees, we don't need them for pollination or anything else. In fact, we had 3 beehives across the road on our other lot there. And we moved them over to my friend's lavender farm over by Canopolis. He's an avid beekeeper. I was not. And he takes better care of them. They're doing great over there. He wants to move them back, and we're probably going to put them up here on the hillside here. It was just that I was having to feed them through the winter because they weren't putting up enough. They don't get enough nectar off my lavender, so they were more dependent on the wildflowers around here in the alfalfa field that's about a half a mile away.
Is growing lavender profitable?
It can be. Not this year, but I'm assuming that's the case. It depends on the business model that the lavender farms will pick. If they're involved with agritourism, yes. Then you're bringing in a different crowd. There are those that grow lavender just to distill, and that's all they do. So they harvest their crop, they distill it, and they're done for the year. And that's kind of attractive right now to me, but that's not the model that we chose.
Do you ship your crops? If so, where?
Well, we typically don't ship the crop. We have to strip the buds off the bundles, and then I distill the buds to get the oil. And once I have the oil, then I can start making my products. And so then we actually ship the products all over the country. And I've got probably maybe 18 wholesale accounts that I sell to, and most of them are in Kansas, but there's some in outlying states as well.
Are there regulations for shipping over state lines?
Well, actually, we have no shipping restrictions. I'm really not shipping crops, so it's not like USDA sends out an inspector or anything else. I was certified naturally grown, and we had a certification process with that, and I allowed that to lapse this year. But basically, it was a certification more to my customers that we use no chemicals. Because anything I apply to the ground or to the plant, it's going to end up in my oil. There's no way I can separate it because it's absorbed by the plant. So in order to make sure that my oils are pure and they don't have some man-made additive to it, then we just don't use anything. And the other reason is I was just too cheap. I figured if it died, I'd do something else. Well, dang things wouldn't die.
Are there government agencies involved in growing, harvesting, and sales of lavender?
No, and there are some of us that would like the government to be a little bit more involved because we have some, I'll call them bad players, who tend to propagate diseased plants and then sell it all over the country, and we're having a problem with that right now. And so the USDA has been getting more and more involved because, and we use our state Department of Ag, and they've literally protected us. We had a situation where we brought in a lot of plants, a lot of little babies, to put into these pots, and I immediately get them tested. And right now, the only place we really get them tested is at Clemson, at their lab, and that's kind of an agreement between K-State and the state, is that Clemson has the right kind of equipment. So we found out we had diseased plants. So I called K-State, they said, you need to talk to your plant protection person, and I called that person from Wichita. She was up here the next day, and within 5 minutes she was on the phone with her boss in Topeka, and they wrote up a edict, in essence, telling this grower in another part of up in the Northwest that they had to get these plants out of Kansas now. So we in Kansas are very lucky. We have a more proactive Department of Agriculture than most places do, and I had a person in Michigan that had this problem, called me about it, and I said, you go to your state Department of Ag. They went and they said, oh, no big deal. And so I said, why don't you tell them about me and my relationship with the Department of Ag here in Kansas? So they used my name, and immediately the Department of Ag says, "Oh, let's think we'll do something." So the word has been out across the country that states like Kansas are literally protecting agriculture because we can't afford to get these diseases in our state.
Is lavender sold by the bushel or the pound or what?
Oh, we measure by the pound, and bear in mind that 1 pound is about 1 gallon in size. And so when I distill, it takes 200 gallons or 200 pounds of buds for me to get 1 pound of oil, which is 16 ounces by weight. So people are confused about why essential oils are expensive. Think of all the labor it took them to get 200 pounds just to get that 1 pound of oil. And so that's why the oil is worth more to me for my products than it is to sell it outright retail. I do not wholesale the oil. I just can't afford to do it. I need that more than I need the sales for wholesale. Well, this is going to be our 10th annual festival, and it's a one-day event. It's going to be from 9 o'clock to 4. That's this coming Saturday, June 17th. And we have tours going on all day. We'll have live demonstrations going on at scheduled times throughout the day. We have live music all day. We have plant sales, lavender plant sales. Morford Lavender Farm will be over here selling plants. We've got Vanjie Henry from Apple Mint Catering will be here doing our food. And she does lavender lemonade, lavender tea, lavender ice cream, lavender chicken wraps. So people can experience lavender in a culinary sense. It is an herb, and most people don't associate lavender with it, but when I start asking them, well, what herbs do you cook with? They typically say, well, like rosemary or sage. Well, lavender is a sister of those two. They're all members of the mint family. And a little goes a long way, so you can quickly overpower a dish. You can always add more, but you can't take it out once it's in. So judicious use is called for. And so Vanjie will be offering an opportunity for people to try that out. And I think she's got some scones that she's going to be making and things of that nature. We'll have the Kansas plein air artist here painting. All the musicians are local. Most of them are all good friends of ours, and they actually keep coming back every year because they want to do this festival. And we'll typically have several thousand people here throughout the day. And I would love to do a 2-day event. It would spread it out a little bit more. Part of it is trying to get the musicians back here and the food vendors and all that. It's just kind of problematic for them. And my wife said she'd divorce me, and the staff said they'd all quit. So we have a 1-day event.
Right, we have lavender growers all across the country, from up in the Sequim, Washington area, which a lot of people know about, to the East Coast, Virginia and the Carolinas and Maryland, all up and down there. There's a lot of lavender growers. And I've been just finished serving a term on the board of directors of the U.S. Lavender Growers Association. And I continue to serve on the Education and Research Committee of the organization and serve on a special ad hoc committee that is doing research on a disease that exists that is fatal to lavender as it is to other plants like potatoes, and was the same form of Phytophthora that was part of the Great Potato Blight in Ireland in around 1850.
He remembers it well.
Yeah, I remember that, you know. But anyway, I survived it, you know.
Yeah.
1.5 million people died in that famine as a result of that blight. But anyway, I serve on those national committees, but the organization serves to try to help growers and people not only grow lavender, but then market various kinds of products. So Wanda does a few products. What are some of the products that you do?
Oh, I do lotions and creams and different kinds
Soaps.
of creams and soap and sachets and
Things like that.
pillows and, you know,
Eye pillows,
anything
neck
that I can
pillows.
stuff lavender into.
Yeah.
If you have an opportunity, be sure and stop by one of the lavender farms here in Kansas. You will learn firsthand about the healing and relaxing properties of this beautiful aromatic plant. That's all for this episode of Real Ag. Remember, if you want to catch up on other episodes of this series, go to SmokyHillsTV.org. For the Real Ag crew, I'm Kyle Bauer, and this has been Real Ag.
Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.